Hi, my name is Will Wilson. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation, a trans-customary artist, and thank you very much for having me, and I'm excited about this panel and to share some of the work. I'm going to be talking about three different projects that are somewhat related, but hopefully they all kind of address issues in relation to time and space and photography. So the first is the Critical Indigenous Photographic Exchange, or CIPEX for short. CIPEX stimulates a critical dialogue around the historical and contemporary photographic exchange. My aim is to convene with artists, Indigenous artists, art professionals, tribal leaders, and our allies to engage in the performative ritual that is the studio portrait. This experience is intensified by the use of large format wet plate photography. This beautifully alchemic process dramatically contributed to our understanding of Native American people, and in so doing, our American identity. It is worth noting that the first photographs of Navajo, the Diné, were created with this process during the 1864 deportation and attempt at ethnic cleansing of the Navajo people by the US government. As a citizen of the Navajo Nation and Indigenous artist working in the 21st century, I'm impatient with the way that American culture remains enamored of one moment in the photographic exchange between Indigenous Americans and Euro-American society, the decades from 1907 to 1930, when Edward S. Curtis produced his opus, The North American Indian. So I really did frame kind of the project initially as a response to Curtis, but hopefully it moves past Curtis and it does a lot more in terms of thinking about what it really means to, make a portrait of somebody and to honor that, to slow down the process with the analog. One of the taglines for the project was, "What if Indians invented photography?" In the process, generosity, I think, is centered, as well as exchange. I gift the sitter the original tintype in exchange for a scan of it, and an open-ended release so that the person can use the image in any way they want. Over the course of the time, I've gotten a chance to do thousands of these images. So it's a project that I really love, and I find it very compelling, and I've gotten to photograph an amazing kind of cohort of folks. Kind of an offshoot of that project, but much more a collaboration with Professor Adam McKinney, who teaches at TCU, Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas, is the Fred Rouse Memorial Project. And this is a collaboration between me and Adam McKinney. It should also be noted that all of these images are talking tintypes. So I developed software along with an organization in Santa Fe called Digital Ant Media, and they built out the code for an augmented reality experience. So when you scan these tintype images with your phone or your device that has the app, Adam will actually start to dance this amazing choreography in these spaces, right? So you can kind of go to these sites and activate the images and kind of make this linkage, I think, through kind of time and space in a really dynamic way. Adam's done an extensive amount of research in relation to this story and this history that happened in 1921, and I'll read a little bit from Adam's perspective. When I arrived in Fort Worth, Texas, I learned of the 1921 racial Texas lynching of Mr. Fred Rouse. As I began to delve deeper into this untold history, I asked individuals, organizations, and institutions what they knew about Mr. Fred Rouse. Most often the response was, "Who?" Therein began my journey to remember Mr. Rouse. With Will, we traveled to each of the 5 Fort Worth locations associated with the racial terror lynching. Through choreography and photography, I used my body to remember Mr. Rouse by transporting my body across space and time, linking the anti-Black racial terror violence enacted upon Mr. Rouse to all the ways my own body has been and is targeted for racism. These tintypes became the inspiration for DNA Works' Fort Lynching Tour, honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Rouse, FWLT for short. They do a bike and a car tour to all of these locations. And there's an augmented reality app that participants are invited to download as well. That is kind of geocached, space cached kind of content in relation to these sites. So I should go back here. And the first site is the I think it's 1001 Main Street, North Main Street in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's actually the last major building that the Ku Klux Klan built that's still standing. And it was there in Fort Worth, and Adam's standing right in front of it. It was the KKK Clavern 101. And actually a number of the, murderers who took Fred Rouse were part of this organization. Mr. Fred Rouse, he worked in the meatpacking district, and he wasn't allowed to be in the union. And there was a strike going on, and he crossed the picket line. He knew there'd be trouble, and there was. He had brought a gun with him to work so that he could defend himself on his way home. He was eventually overwhelmed by the mob and kind of beat within an inch of his life, left for dead. He ended up in the city and county hospital in Fort Worth, and I think later that night, a mob, which included off-duty police officers from the Fort Worth Police Department, kidnapped him, and they took him to this site where there was something called the Death Tree, hackberry tree, where a lynching had, at least one other lynching had occurred before. And so Fred Rouse was murdered at this site. Again, Adam has done some amazing choreography at each of these kind of important locations. And along with DNA Works, he's actually purchased this site and is going to create a memorial park there. This is the old cemetery where Fred Rouse is buried. Adam's also trying to save the original KKK Clavern and transform it into a museum in honor of Fred Rouse for peace, justice, and reconciliation. So this is a shift. I'm going to talk a little bit about this project now, which is called Connecting the Dots for a Just Transition. So this project raises awareness about a critical opportunity for a just transition in the Navajo Nation as it addresses remediation following uranium extraction that has poisoned the land and impoverished the people. I will create an unconventional photographic survey using drone-based aerial and app-activated photography to help Diné people restory our narrative. My project will present a portrait of environmental and social poverty, but more importantly, shape a platform for voices of resilience, wisdom, and vision for a transition to restorative systems of economy and memory making. This survey will lead to a series of exhibitions and educational curriculum to help advocate for a reformed approach to environmental remediation underway on the Navajo Nation. So many of these sites, there's over 520 of them on the Navajo Nation, are not even marked, and they aren't fenced, and they represent a serious health hazard to people today. This is the site of the rare metals uranium processing mill. It's 4 miles away from where I grew up in Tuba City, and when I was a kid, I used to go here and hang out and play. Oops, sorry about that. And this is what it looks like today. It's a super fun site. There's a number of these kind of remediation, I don't know, they look like monumental obelisks that have landed on the ground or something. But the use of drone photography in order to kind of understand these spaces and to bear witness to them, I think has just opened up an amazing opportunity for people who want to kind of tell the story of these places. And also, you know, just to understand like the physical dynamics of these different places. You know, water is so incredibly important on the nation. This is right next to the Little Colorado River. Drainage, depressions in the land will fill with water. Livestock will go to drink that water, and we eat the sheep. So, you know, it's a problem that needs to be addressed, and I'm really interested in seeing how this powerful new tool might help kind of tell that story, and also open up all kinds of other avenues of kind of bearing witness and truth telling around this issue, these ideas. But anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to share some of the work, and I look forward to our conversation and questions. Thank you.